The townsfolk of Red Rock always whispered about the sheriff's girl, the one with midnight eyes and a fire in her soul. They didn't know she was half-Comanche, raised in secret by the very man sworn to uphold the law. Sheriff James Whitman saved her as a baby, pulled from the ruins of a burned village, and kept her truth buried deep beneath dust and silence. But secrets don't stay buried forever. Now, as tensions rise between settlers and native tribes, Naya finds herself torn between two worlds, and one unforgivable betrayal. When her cousin is arrested and war threatens to erupt, she confronts the man she once called father, with a rifle in her hands and questions in her heart. In a land where bloodlines divide and love demands sacrifice, what happens when the past comes calling with a loaded gun? It was the late 1870s, a time when the West was still wild, a place where the rules were made and broken by those brave or desperate enough to claim their stake. The town was small but bustling enough to have a sheriff's office, a saloon with swinging doors that creaked on their hinges, and a trading post where goods from far-off places arrived once a week by wagon. Sheriff James Whitman was a man carved from this rough landscape. Tall, with a lean frame that belied surprising strength, his steel-gray eyes were sharp and watchful, reflecting years spent keeping order in a place where chaos was never far away. He wore a battered Stetson, a leather duster stained by dust and sweat, and carried himself with the quiet authority earned from years of standing between the townsfolk and the lawlessness just beyond their borders. But James carried a secret more dangerous than any outlaw, a secret that shaped his every decision. Years ago, during a raid on a Comanche village, he found a baby girl abandoned amid the ashes. Her small hands clutched a worn piece of leather, and her eyes, dark and fierce, held a fire that refused to be extinguished. Against the whispered disapproval of his peers, James took the child in and raised her as his own, far from prying eyes. That girl was Naya. Now in her late teens, Naya was a striking mix of two worlds, the proud, untamed spirit of her Comanche heritage intertwined with the quiet resilience of the town that had become her home. She moved with the grace of a dancer and the alertness of a scout, her long black hair often pulled back to reveal high cheekbones and eyes that seemed to hold stories untold. She was quick-witted, stubborn, and fiercely independent, traits that had won her both friends and enemies among the townsfolk. Though James never hid his love for her, he shielded her true heritage from the world, fearing the harsh judgment and danger it might bring. In Red Rock, bloodlines mattered, and prejudice ran deep. Naya's existence was a fragile secret, one that she herself wrestled with in quiet moments beneath the stars. The townspeople whispered about the girl raised by the sheriff, some with admiration, others with suspicion. Among them was Old Tom, the grizzled blacksmith, who often shook his head and muttered about mixing blood, and Mrs. Harlow, the widow who eyed Naya with wary eyes when she passed by the church. But Naya's closest allies were few. Sarah, the spirited schoolteacher who encouraged her thirst for knowledge, and Eli, a young ranch hand who admired her from afar with a shy smile. As the sun set over Red Rock, the delicate balance of peace, secrecy, and simmering tensions began to shift. The frontier was never still for long, and for Naya and James, the coming days would test everything they thought they knew about family, loyalty, and love. For years, Sheriff James Whitman had walked a precarious tightrope, balancing his sworn duty to maintain order in Red Rock with the secret he guarded more fiercely than any outlaw's weapon. Naya wasn't just a ward or a charge, she was family. But in this rough frontier town where suspicion and prejudice ran as thick as dust, keeping her half-Comanche heritage hidden was becoming an impossible task. Tensions in Red Rock were rising like the dry heat before a thunderstorm. Rumors swept through the saloon and trading post. whispers of Comanche warriors staging raids on outlying settlements, cattle disappearing in the night, and the fragile peace between settlers and native tribes unraveling. The townsfolk, already wary of the Comanche, were growing restless and fearful, their fears easily fanned by fiery words and old grudges. The town council summoned James more than once, pressing him to take a harder stance. "Sheriff," Councilman Barrett had said, voice low but firm, "we need a clear message. If we don't show strength now, we'll lose control. The settlers want protection, and the law needs to be decisive." James understood the pressure, but to him, justice wasn't a simple line drawn between good and bad. It was tangled in survival, honor, and the complicated truths of this land. Most nights, when the stars stretched across the dark sky, James wrestled with his conscience, especially when he looked at Naya. Naya herself was caught in a storm of conflicting emotions. Her blood was part Comanche, part white settler, an identity that left her neither fully accepted by the town nor entirely at home with the tribe she'd never met. James had been her protector and teacher, showing her how to shoot, ride, and navigate this harsh world. But he had also warned her to keep her heritage a secret, fearing for her safety in a place where such knowledge could invite cruelty. One evening, as the sun slipped behind the hills, Naya overheard old Tom, the town blacksmith, grumble in the general store. "That girl, she's trouble. Half-breed or not, you can't trust blood like that." Nearby, Mrs. Harlow nodded solemnly, clutching her shawl tighter. Naya's stomach clenched, but she said nothing, swallowing her anger and hurt. The real turning point came when a group of Comanche hunters was caught near the town boundary, accused of stealing livestock. The town demanded action, and James found himself forced to arrest Dakota, a proud Comanche warrior who was also Naya's cousin, connected to her mother's tribe. Bringing Dakota into the sheriff's office was like dragging a wound into the open. The town celebrated the arrest as a victory, but among the Comanche, it was seen as a grave betrayal. That night, Naya sat by the fire outside their cabin, her thoughts as restless as the flickering flames. "Why did you have to arrest him?" she asked James, voice barely above a whisper. James sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "The law's a harsh thing, Naya. Sometimes it forces my hand. I don't want to hurt your people, especially not you." "But if you don't stand with your people, who will?" Naya's eyes burned with pain. "I feel like I'm being torn in two." At the same time, a new threat crept closer to Red Rock. Cole Graves, a ruthless outlaw with a gang of mercenaries, saw the town's unrest as an opportunity. Graves orchestrated raids on supply wagons and spread rumors, pushing settlers and Comanche toward open conflict. His shadow loomed over the town, growing darker by the day. Caught between the mounting dangers and her fractured identity, Naya's heart twisted. She wanted to be proud of who she was, not forced to hide like a secret. But the fear of losing James, the man who had been her protector and anchor, weighed heavily on her soul. One evening, James and Naya sat beneath a sky peppered with stars. His voice was gentle but firm. "You need to be careful, Naya. The truth about who you are, it's a flame. It can warm, but it can also burn." Naya looked away, tears glistening. "I'm tired of hiding. I want to stand tall, even if it means standing alone." James reached for her hand, his grip steady. "You'll never be alone, but sometimes love means knowing when to wait and when to fight." The fragile peace in Red Rock was about to shatter. And for James and Naya, the days ahead would test the limits of loyalty, identity, and love, in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The days following Dakota's arrest were like a slow-burning fire consuming every part of Red Rock. The town's atmosphere grew thick with suspicion and anger, whispers twisting into harsh accusations, and old wounds threatening to reopen. Yet beneath this turmoil, the bond between Naya and Sheriff James deepened in quiet, complicated ways, a fragile love story forged in the harsh realities of a divided world. Naya had always known James as her protector and mentor. He was the man who had pulled her from the ashes of a war-torn village and given her a chance at life. But over the years, their relationship had evolved beyond the boundaries of father and ward, carrying a weight of unspoken feelings neither was fully prepared to name. One afternoon, as the sun beat down mercilessly on the town, Naya rode out alone beyond the edge of the settlement. She sought the open plains where the wind could wash away the heavy silence pressing on her heart. The wide sky stretched endlessly above her, a reminder of the freedom she craved, yet could never fully grasp. James followed at a distance, watching her from the shadow of an ancient oak. He admired her fierce independence, the way she moved like the wind, strong, wild, and unyielding. But he also saw the struggle in her eyes, the conflict between the daughter he had raised and the young woman trying to find her own path. "Why do you ride so far from town?" he finally asked, stepping into the clearing. Naya turned, surprise flickering across her face before it softened. "Because out here, the world isn't watching. I can be myself without the weight of their judgments." James nodded slowly. "I want you to be free, Naya, but I also want you to be safe." She smiled, bittersweet. Sometimes safety feels like a cage. Their conversation was interrupted by the distant sound of hooves pounding on dry earth. A rider approached, dust swirling behind him. It was Eli, the young ranch hand who had admired Naya quietly from the sidelines. His cheeks were flushed with urgency. "Sheriff, there's trouble near the old trading post. Graves's men are causing a ruckus again. They're pushing the settlers and Comanche toward open conflict." James's jaw tightened. Graves's outlaw gang was growing bolder, exploiting every crack in the town's fragile peace. He gave a quick nod to Naya. "Stay close, Naya. This won't be safe." Back in town, the tensions boiled over. Graves's men blocked the trading post entrance, shouting threats and challenging anyone who dared approach. The settlers gathered, armed and angry. A group of Comanche warriors, led by a younger cousin of Dakota's, appeared on the scene, their faces stern and weapons ready. The standoff felt like a powder keg ready to explode. Naya stood beside James, her heart pounding. She saw the fury in the eyes of the settlers and the resolve in the Comanche warriors. It was a moment that could tear the town apart, or force them to find a new way forward. "Enough!" James's voice rang out, steady but commanding. "We are not here to start a war. Graves wants us divided, but we won't let him win." The crowd murmured, some reluctantly lowering their weapons. Naya stepped forward, raising her voice with quiet authority. "We share this land. We can choose to live together, or we can let hate destroy us. I won't stand by and watch us fall apart." Her words carried the weight of her bloodline, the voice of both settler and Comanche, a bridge between two worlds. For a brief moment, the air stilled, but obstacles weren't finished with them. Days later, as Naya and James shared a rare moment of peace, the town's prejudice surfaced again. At the general store, Old Tom confronted Naya openly, his voice gruff and cruel. "You think you belong here? You're not one of us." Naya's eyes flashed with defiance. "I am who I am, and I won't be ashamed." Before the argument could escalate, James stepped between them. "That's enough, Tom. This town is for everyone who calls it home, no matter their blood." But even his words couldn't quell the growing divide. Naya's struggle was not only external. Inside her heart, the weight of secrets and unspoken feelings pressed down like the desert sun. She had fallen for James, a love tangled with gratitude, respect, and a yearning for acceptance. But the barriers of their worlds, the shadows of their past, and the danger that surrounded them made the path forward uncertain. One evening, beneath a sky glittering with stars, Naya found herself sitting close to James by the fire. The silence between them was thick, loaded with everything left unsaid. "James," she whispered, voice trembling, "I don't want to keep hiding. Not my past, not my feelings." He reached for her hand, rough from years of work, but gentle now. "Naya, I've loved you since you were a child, but this world isn't kind to us. If anyone knew," her fingers tightened around his. "I don't care anymore. I want to be honest. With you, with myself." Their eyes met, holding a promise and a question. But just as love began to bloom, danger struck again. Cole Graves's gang launched a violent raid on the town's supply wagons, burning carts and leaving settlers injured. Graves sent a clear message. The fragile peace in Red Rock was over. James rallied the town's men, preparing for a confrontation that could end in bloodshed. Naya, determined not to be sidelined, trained harder, learning to handle a gun with deadly precision. She rode out alongside James, her heart pounding with fear and fierce resolve. The frontier was closing in on them, testing their courage, their loyalty, and the strength of their bond. In the midst of chaos, a plan formed to unite settlers and Comanche against Graves and his men. Naya became a symbol of hope, a living bridge between two worlds that needed each other to survive. But the journey was far from easy. Prejudice, fear, and pain lurked in every shadow. Friends turned into enemies, secrets threatened to unravel everything, and the line between love and sacrifice blurred with every passing day. As Naya and James faced down Graves's growing threat, they also faced the hardest battle of all, breaking free from the past to embrace a future where love could truly thrive. The sun had barely risen over Red Rock, but the town was already tense, a silent storm gathering before the inevitable clash. Graves and his gang had made their final move, setting fire to a barn on the outskirts and taking hostages, pushing Red Rock to the brink of destruction. Sheriff James Whitman stood in the center of town, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the outlaws. At his side was Naya, no longer just the girl he had raised in secret, but a fierce warrior in her own right. She wore the same determination in her eyes that James had seen when she was a child, but now it was sharpened by love, loss, and the weight of her heritage. The town was divided, some ready to fight beside them, others too fearful to stand against Graves's ruthless men. The settlers and Comanche alike gathered, a fragile alliance forged out of desperation. James turned to Naya, his voice low but urgent. "This is it. We either stand together or fall divided." She nodded, gripping the rifle she had learned to wield. "I'm ready. For us. For Red Rock." But just as they prepared to move out, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Naya's greatest challenge, and James's most painful betrayal all at once. From the edge of the street, Naya stepped forward, gun drawn and aimed directly at the sheriff himself. "Don't move, James." Her voice was steady but trembling with emotion. The townsfolk gasped. The sheriff, who had been like a father, now faced the barrel of a gun held by the girl he had raised. "Why, Naya?" James asked, his heart breaking, but his voice calm. "Why are you doing this?" Naya's eyes burned with unshed tears. "Because I can't trust you anymore. You've hidden the truth, protected secrets that cost lives. You arrested Dakota. You sided with the town that would see my people destroyed. I don't know who you are anymore." James took a slow breath, lowering his hands but keeping his gaze steady. "I did what I had to protect this town, to protect you. But I never stopped loving you. Not once." "Love?" Naya whispered, voice cracking. "Is that what this is? When you told me to hide who I am, when you turned your back on my family?" The street was silent, the tension suffocating. The line between love and betrayal blurred, the weight of years of secrets crashing down. Then, from behind the crowd, Dakota stepped forward, his face grave. "Naya," he said softly, "James is more than a sheriff. He's the man who saved your life. But the pain runs deep for all of us." Naya's hand trembled, the gun wavering as memories of childhood, love, and loss flooded her mind. "James, we have to end this. Together," she said finally, lowering the gun. James nodded, relief washing over him, but tempered by the knowledge that their battle was far from over. The final fight against Graves's gang erupted moments later. Gunfire cracked through the air, shouts echoing as settlers and Comanche fought side by side. Naya and James moved as one, covering each other's backs, their bond renewed in the fire of battle. When the dust settled, Graves lay defeated, his gang scattered. The town was bruised but standing, a testament to the strength found in unity. In the aftermath, Naya and James faced each other beneath the scorched sky. No more secrets remained between them. Their love, tested by fire and betrayal, was real, fragile but unbreakable. James took her hands in his. "We'll build a new future, Naya, one where you don't have to hide." Naya smiled, hope shining through her tears. Together. The fires that had threatened to consume Red Rock were finally smothered, leaving behind charred earth and broken fences, but also a new sense of hope. The scars of battle were etched deeply on the town, on its people, and on Naya and James, but they had endured. Together, they stood stronger. The days that followed the final showdown were filled with quiet rebuilding. Settlers and Comanche worked side by side, repairing homes, mending fences, and clearing away the ashes of conflict. The fragile peace that had teetered on the edge had finally begun to settle into something more lasting, a hard-won understanding born from shared hardship. Naya and James, once bound by secrecy and silence, now faced the future openly. The gun that Naya had once pointed at James had been a turning point, not just for their relationship, but for the entire town. In the warmth of the late afternoon sun, Naya stood outside the small cabin she and James called home. Her eyes traced the horizon, where the golden fields met the rolling hills. The wind carried the scent of sage and cedar, familiar and comforting. James approached, carrying a bundle of freshly cut firewood. His face was weathered, but softened by relief and a gentle smile. "It's a new day," he said, stacking the wood by the porch. Naya nodded. "We've been through hell, but we're still standing." James sat beside her, the silence between them no longer heavy, but filled with unspoken promises. "You know," James began, "I always worried about how the town would accept you once the truth came out." Naya smiled softly. "Me too. But I think they're starting to see that we're stronger because of our differences, not in spite of them." Their bond was no longer a secret. The town knew who Naya was, half Comanche, brave and unafraid. And the town, for all its faults, had begun to open its heart. At the town meeting that evening, James stood before the gathered settlers and Comanche leaders. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of his authority and the hope of the future. Red Rock has always been a land of new beginnings. We've faced hardship, but we've also found strength in unity. Let this be the town where no one is forced to hide who they are. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Dakota stood nearby, nodding in quiet approval. The barriers that once divided them were beginning to crumble. But Naya's journey was far from over. She knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges, prejudice, old grudges, and the fight to claim her identity in both worlds. Yet, with James by her side, she felt ready. That night, under a blanket of stars, James and Naya sat by the fire. The flames flickered, casting warm light on their faces. "I never told you this before," James said softly, "but the day I found you, wrapped in a blanket on the prairie, I made a promise. To raise you safe, to give you a chance at life. I didn't know then that you'd teach me about love and courage." Naya reached out, taking his hand. "You saved me in more ways than one, and you showed me that family isn't just about blood. It's about love and trust." Their hands clasped tightly, a symbol of the journey they had traveled, from secrets and silence to truth and acceptance. In the days that followed, Naya began to teach the children of Red Rock, sharing stories of the Comanche people, their traditions, and the beauty of embracing one's heritage. The settlers listened, captivated by a world they had never understood before. Slowly, the town transformed. Walls of suspicion gave way to bridges of friendship. Naya and James became symbols of that change, proof that love could cross any divide. As the seasons turned, Red Rock thrived. New families arrived, drawn by the promise of a place where differences were not feared but celebrated. One afternoon, as Naya rode along the riverbank, she paused to watch a group of children playing, Comanche and settler alike, laughing without fear or judgment. A smile spread across her face. James joined her, his presence steady and comforting. "Look at them," Naya said. "They don't see the lines we did. They just see friends." James nodded. "That's the future we fought for." Their eyes met, filled with hope and a quiet determination. The past would always be a part of them, the struggles, the pain, the secrets. But so was the future, bright, uncertain, and full of possibility. And in that moment, under the wide-open sky of the West, Naya and James knew they had found something rare and precious, a love that could heal, a family forged by choice, and a home built on trust. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the town in a warm glow, Naya whispered, "Together." James squeezed her hand. "Always." The story of a white sheriff who secretly raised a half-Comanche girl had become a legend of the West, not of hatred and division, but of love and unity, reminding everyone that sometimes the greatest battles are fought within the heart, and the strongest bonds are built on courage and acceptance. If you enjoyed this gripping Western love story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more powerful tales of courage and heart. What did you think of James and Naya's journey? Could love really overcome all the barriers they faced? Drop your thoughts and favorite moments in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if you want more stories like this, share this video with friends who appreciate stories of love, identity, and resilience. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next adventure.